Hi, Bad Gamer here. So, let me get this straight. In 2019, Death Stranding drops. Kojima goes full Kojima, delivers a game where you're literally hiking through the apocalypse with a fetus in a jar. And people completely lost their minds. Some called it a masterpiece. Others called it Amazon Prime, the game. And then there were those brave enough to actually say, bro, this ain't a game. This is walking therapy. Cut to 2025, Death Stranding 2 on the beach releases. Same vibes, more rope metaphors, and suddenly, it's revolutionary? I have spent about a week with the game now, and as I expected, it's another Death Stranding. And I'm really happy about that, because I loved the first one. But not so the critics. They were pretty split. IGN gave it a 6.8, calling it a slog and frustratingly mundane, with a reviewer asking if Death Stranding even qualified as fun. Flash forward to Death Stranding 2, and IGN suddenly gives it a 9 out of 10, praising it is deeper, weirder, and far more exciting, like the walking got a glow up and now it counts as innovation. Meanwhile, GameSpot over here gave the original a 9, calling it one of the most ambitious and rewarding games they'd ever played. The critic praised the deliberate pacing and emotional depth. But Death Stranding 2, GameSpot hit it with a 6 out of 10, saying the sequel, quote, loses charm over the original simplicity and feels too gamey, too cluttered. So IGN went from this is boring to this is brilliant, and GameSpot went from this is genius to this is bloated. Make it make sense, dude. The sequel obviously looks and plays better because duh, it's been 6 years. Let's be real, Death Stranding 2 isn't a reinvention. It's an iteration, a refined version of the same weird ass formula, and that's great. But what's with the revisionist history? Why are we acting like this is Kojima suddenly now making something mainstream? Spoiler, it's still weird, it's still indulgent, it's still Kojima giving you cutscenes about space whales, digital consciousness, and rope metaphors. And now you like it? Gameplay. Yes, Death Stranding 2 definitely has better combat. Yes, traversal is smoother, but if you hated the core gameplay loop before, guess what? It's still here. You are still delivering things. You're still scanning terrain. You're still out there hiking with a backpack that's probably bigger than your trauma. But now the devs obviously sprinkled in a few more amazing set pieces moments and some mild stealth, which feels very Kojima actually in a sense, and more weapons, and suddenly people say it's more fun. I don't know, man. Sounds like you didn't know what game you were playing back in 2019. The fact that a bunch of reviewers who panned the first game are now calling Death Stranding 2 poetic, visionary, ahead of its time. Brother, it was the same damn time. You just needed the rest of the industry to keep pumping out soulless life service shovelware long enough for Death Stranding to actually start looking like a philosophical oasis. The first game didn't change. You did. In fairness, the sequel does lean more into themes like grief, found family, personal loss, stuff like that. There's an emotional weight. There's an emotional weight here that goes beyond just don't let your packages fall into the river. The cast feels even more emotionally raw. Fragile is given more depth. There are new characters that are wrestling with like tech-induced existential dread. And yeah, obviously it works just as it did in the first game. It hits. It's not because the first game lacked depth. It's because people weren't ready to see it back then. So what's the final verdict? Death Stranding 2 is great, just like the first one was. Only now some people have collectively gaslit themselves into believing it's better because it has more stuff. Maybe it's time to admit that the original was ahead of its curve. Maybe the walking simulator discourse was lazy as hell. And maybe, just maybe, Kojima knew what he was doing all along. But hey, you tell me, was the first one boring? Or were you just not ready to think about the human condition while carrying a box of printer ink up a mountain? Let me know in the comments. Or don't. You know, I'll just be over here walking. Stay sharp, gamers. Button mash responsibly. Bad gamer out.